For more than 3 years now, the largest and deadliest war in Europe since World War II has been ongoing. Surely, everyone has asked themselves at least once, why? Why did it all start? Were there really significant reasons to begin this horror? And has Russia managed to achieve its goals? Well, it's time to figure that out. I decided to divide this video into 2 parts. In the first part, I'll talk about the official reasons for the war according to the Kremlin. In the second part, you'll hear the unofficial but more plausible reasons for the start of this nightmare. So subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss the second part. So, what are the official reasons for the war according to Moscow? The official reasons are as follows: demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine, preventing the deployment of US and NATO forces on Ukrainian territory, and ensuring the safety of the DPR and LPR, since according to Russia, Kiev was exterminating the Russian population in eastern Ukraine. In simpler terms, the Kremlin wanted to disarm Ukraine as much as possible, prevent NATO's expansion onto its territory, eradicate neo-Nazism in Ukraine, and ensure the safety of the Russian-speaking population living in the southeast and east of Ukraine. But how truthful are Moscow's intentions, and did it manage to achieve its goals? Let's go through them one by one. Disarming Ukraine didn't work, quite the opposite. The Kremlin's actions only stimulated Ukraine to strengthen itself. However, Moscow did manage to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. Although as a result of the war in Ukraine, Sweden and Finland joined the alliance, which doubled the length of the NATO-Russia border. As for neo-Nazism, that's a whole separate discussion. The idea that Ukrainians have a deep love for Nazism is nothing more than a product of Russian propaganda. And based on the Kremlin's rhetoric, it becomes obvious that under the pretext of denazification, Moscow actually wanted to eliminate nationalist movements in Ukraine altogether, essentially to make it so that the Ukrainian nation would no longer be considered a separate nation. Putin himself has expressed sympathies for the classification from the Russian Empire era, when Russians were considered Great Russians and Ukrainians were Little Russians. In other words, they weren't seen as separate peoples but as one and the same. Through its aggressive actions, Russia only pushed Ukrainians further towards self-determination. Many Ukrainians who previously spoke Russian are now actively switching to Ukrainian. For example, if we go to the most popular Ukrainian YouTube channel, we can see that videos used to be in Russian, but after the war began, they switched to producing content in Ukrainian. And they're not the only ones who did so. And when it comes to the safety of Russians in Ukraine, that's a complete disaster. Many residents of the occupied territories either fled or are no longer alive. And was Kiev really exterminating the Russian-speaking population in those regions? Obviously not. The majority of Ukrainians spoke Russian to some extent, and many even had relatives living in Russia. Out of all the objectives Russia set for itself, it only achieved one: preventing Ukraine from joining NATO. All the other goals failed shamefully. And were the Kremlin's motives really that pure? Did Kiev really hate the Russian-speaking population so much? If that were the case, then why did the conflict in Donbass only start in 2014, the moment when, out of nowhere, unidentified men appeared, what people then called Little Green Men, one of whom later admitted that the war started because of him? Is Moscow truly that afraid of a Western attack, considering that Europe, for example, is quite dependent on Russian energy, and many European countries don't even have mandatory military service? Maybe the Kremlin is hiding the real motives behind its actions? We'll talk about that in the second part. To make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to the channel and click the bell, so you'll always be up to date on new events.